My name's Dave, and in this video we're going to talk about lists. So lists are very similar to arrays. Arrays are great if you know exactly what the size will be. Remember, we had to put in the size of the array, 5, 25, whatever. So you have to know the size of the array. And also, if you don't need a lot of functionality, like adding items, removing items, things like that, then an array is perfect, right? If you know the size of the array and you don't need to add and remove stuff, then array is good. But what if you don't know how many items are going to be in the collection? And what if you do need to add and remove items? The answer is use a list, right? Lists are great. So let's look at some examples here. I have a form app, by the way, and I just called mine a list, and I just put one button in here. Let's go to some examples. Quite a few examples here, and let's take a look at this line here. We got a little different syntax, right? So throwing some new syntax at you, and again, with new syntax, it just takes typing it in a few times to kind of get used to it. So here I am creating a list, right? And just like the same analogy with the box of boxes and the group of variables, same. So just sort of keep that in mind. Hopefully you've seen the video on arrays. It's the same basic thing, but a list allows you to create a collection when you don't know how many values. You can add as many values as you need, or you could remove items. So you can add and remove. You can do there's a lot of different things that you can do. You have a lot of functionality with a list that you don't have with an array. You can think of arrays as sort of static. You have to set how many items go in there. You don't have a lot of functionality. You're kind of limited there, and sometimes that's fine. Sometimes that's okay. But sometimes you don't know how many items, and you need that functionality. In that case, a list would be probably a good choice. And there are other collections. We're only going to cover arrays and lists in this video, in this tutorial series. But there are other collections, but these are the main two that I've used. So let's look at the syntax for creating a list. We have something new here. We have angle brackets, right? We have angle brackets. And this is something in C# called generics. We don't want to delve into generics, but just to give you a general idea, it's kind of a template sort of thing. Here we can use any type, any data type we like. So the generics thing, it's a way to write code that's reusable for a lot of different types, and I wouldn't worry about the implications of that right now. Just to give you a general idea, but within the angle brackets, we put the type. So this is a little different, right? So here we use it's not a keyword, but we use the type list, and this is a type, just like many other type. This is a type, right? And note that it has a teal color too, right? So it's not built into C#. So it's part of .NET, I believe. Actually, I may be I'm not 100% on that, but I believe that it's part of .NET. It really doesn't matter. So this list says create this a list. So this list, this is a type, right? It's a list. That's the type it is, just a list, and it could be a list of any type, right? So you can declare it as any type. We can have a list of strings. We can have a list of integers. We can have a list of anything, any type. They can be primitive types like the int, string, etc., bool, whatever. They can also be custom types or complex types. Same with the arrays, by the way. So we can put any type in here, any type we want. We can put a string if you want. It doesn't matter. Any type that we want. We can have a list of any type, right? And it's just a group of variables, a box of boxes, if you will. So, and the way we tell it the type is with these angle brackets, right? These angle brackets. Look at this. The collection. This is the full qualified name, the namespace. We'll talk about namespaces later. This is a fully qualified namespace, and list is our type, right? So our type, and this is indeed in the .NET class library, by the way. So the T here. What does this T represent? What do you think the T represent? Right? We've been talking about types a lot. Right? We've talked a lot about types. So the T it just means types, right? And here it gives you the definition here, the type of elements in the list. So T means the type of elements in the list, right? So that's all it means. And we have to use these not curly, but the angle brackets, right? And here we put the type, whatever the type is, int, string, custom type, in the .NET class library, whatever it is. In this case, we're using ints. So we put this in between the angle brackets, right? We put the type in between the angle brackets, right? And here we have just a variable. This is just a variable, right? Heights this is my identifier. So when I'm naming my variable, heights, and we can name it anything. It's just a variable, like any other variable. And the type is this list, right? That's the type. That is a data type, right? Just like an int, string. This is just a complex type, right? So here again, the new keyword, we're going to see that new keyword a lot in C#, over and over and over again. And it just says create a new instance of whatever this is, right? Whatever this is, create a new instance of whatever this is. And we're going to break this down more when we get into object-oriented programming. So if the new keyword is clear as mud, don't sweat it. We're going to get to it. I'm not focusing on that right now. We'll focus on that later on. But right now, just know that in this case, it's creating a new list. It just creates a new list, right? So it creates a new list, and it can only hold ints in that list, right? And then the equal sign says assign it to this variable, right? And that's been declared to only hold a list of ints. All right, this variable can only hold a list of ints. That's all it can hold, right? Because that's what we've declared it. All right, just like declaring it, the box is food only. That's same here, or string or int. Same. And this hasn't been declared as an int, right? It's not declared as an int. It's declared as a list that can only hold ints. Right? It's a big difference. It's a list that can only hold ints. You can only put ints in that list, right? Okay, so let's go to this next slide. Here we're using the collection initializer. Just a quick and easy way to add values to initially populate the list, right? And we're just using these curly brackets to do, and then note we separate the values with a comma, right? So this is collection initializer. You don't have to do this. It's just if you know some values, if you know the initial values, then you can do it this way. Sometimes you don't know, right? But if you happen to know, then you can do it this way and condense your code a little bit. Okay, so that's the collection initializer, just like we saw with arrays. So that's one way to initially populate your list. And here's another way. So here I've created a new string list, right? A list of strings, right? It's a list. You can only put strings in it. So I have string, that's the type, that's within the angle brackets. That's my type. So I have this list, this box of boxes, this group of boxes. And you can only put a string in those boxes, right? So a list is my variable that holds the list. It's the variable that holds the list of strings, right? It's a variable that holds the list of strings. And again, the new keywords is just create an instance of that. And one way to add values, probably the most common way to add values to a list, is to use this add method, right? You can use this add method. And let's look at some of the members. Again, the dot gives you the members, the data members of whatever it is, right? These are its members. Everything has members, right? And we're going to talk about members later on. So if that's not crystal clear, don't sweat it. Just know that everything has members, and you access those members with the dot, with a period, right? So these are the members of a list, right? These are its members. And this is actually the variable that holds the list, right? But these are the members of the list. And one of those members is a property. Remember, property has this hand, this whatever that is, and that's the count. That gives you how many elements are in that list, right? This is a method that'll clear the list, right? So a lot of these are self-explanatory. Some of them are not. The add is a way that adds an object to the list. You just add an object to the list. And anytime you're working with methods or using methods, you have to have these parentheses. And we're going to talk about methods later on. A method is a function. It's a way of passing. The parentheses is a way of passing a value to the method. Right, so a lot of times, not always, but often we have to pass a value to a method, and when we pass a value to a method, we have to use these parentheses, right? So anytime you call a method or run a method, you have to have these parentheses, whether you're passing it a value or not. So in this case, we're using this add. It's a method, and note the purple box thingy here. It's the purple box thingy that represents a method, and again, a method just does something. It just does something, right? And in this case, it adds a value to the list, right? It's just adding a value to the list. This list has been declared to only hold strings. We got a list. You only put strings in our list, so I'm passing it a string, right? How do we know this is a string? The quotes, right? The double quotes. So that's my first string, and I'm adding it to that list. And just like with arrays, the lists use index numbers starting at 0. So this will go to the 0th index position, right? That first position, which is index 0. I know that's a little confusing at first. So I add 4 more strings. So I've got my list, and okay, so I've added 5 values to this list, and I can add as many as I want. I'm not limited to 5 like I was with the array the last time. I can keep adding if I want, or I can remove, right? I can remove items. I can add items. I add items. So I have some functionality now. There's things that I can do. So you're a lot more flexible with the list, right? So sometimes you don't need that flexibility. You just need an array of something, and an array is fine. But when you need that functionality and you don't know exactly how many items are going to be in that collection, then you use a list, right? So here I've created an array just like we've done before. I'm using the collection initializer, right, just to condense the code a bit. So I have this array, and I'm going to use another method. This is called add range. Add range, and this adds an entire collection to our list, right? So this is our list, store list. It's the variable that holds our list, right? Store list, and again, dot accesses its members, and one of its members is a method, right? Method called add range. What does this do? It adds elements of the specified collection to the list. So it just adds a collection to the list, right? And these are all, a list and array. These are types of collections or other collections. These are the two most common. So here we're just adding this store array, right? This store array. We declared this array here. We created this array here, and here we're passing it with the wrong one. Here we're passing this store array to this method called add range. Add range adds an entire collection to store lists, which is the variable that holds our list of strings, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to set a breaking point, and we're going to watch all this stuff in the debugger. Let's go ahead and watch this in the debugger. Okay, so before we do this, let me show you one thing before I forget. When you're dealing with methods, you can hover over the methods, and it gives you a little definition of what it does. You can also type in the parentheses, open parentheses, right? I just type in open parentheses, and here it gives me a definition, right, of what it does. And it also gives me the parameter. If you have no idea what a parameter is, that's okay. We're going to talk about those later. Don't sweat it. So this is the parameter. It basically just defines what values you can pass to it. What, if any, values, and sometimes you don't have any parameters, so you can't pass anything to a method. But if you're passing a value to a method, it has to have parameters. That's the way it sets it up, and that may be clear as mud. Don't worry about that. Just know that these are the parameters, which just defines what you can pass to it, right? And we're going to talk about methods later. And this gives you a definition of the parameter. Be able to get in the habit of doing this, just typing in the opening parentheses and taking a look at what's going on, what it says. And some methods have more than one variations, or we'll call it for now. They have more than one variations, and you'll see that, and it'll tell you if there's more than one. In this case, there's only one, but some have more than one. So just get in the habit when you're dealing with methods. You see that little purple box, right? You'll just type in the open parentheses, and you'll see information about the method, right? So just read that information. Just kind of get in the habit of doing that. You'll get in the habit of typing the dot, the period, and taking a look at the members and walking through here in IntelliSense and just looking at the different members and getting an idea. Some of it may not be clear as to what they do, but just to give you an idea, right? So same thing with this opening parentheses. Just get in the habit of doing this and reading, what's going on here, and the more we progress, the clearer this is going to become. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and set a breaking point. Let's set a breaking point right here, line 38. So I'm just going to click over here, or again, you can just press F9. Okay, let's go ahead and run this, and let's take a look at what's going on in the locals window, right? The locals window. And actually, before we do that, I'm going to go back to the design view. I meant to do this earlier. So I'm going to select my form, and you can see the form is selected because of these handles. And you may have noticed I'm dragging the form over, and it's because I forgot to set the starting position. And here, just look for a property called start position, and I'm going to select center screen, so that when that form pops up, it's going to pop up in the center of the screen, so that way I don't have to keep dragging it to the center, right? So let's take a look at that. So I've got a breaking point, and we see it's going to pop up in the center this time, so I don't have to keep dragging it over. Okay, so I'm going to click the button, execute the code, and paper just fell from the sky. Okay, let's take a look at the locals window. Okay, so I have this stored list, right? So 5 items in the store list. It's populated, right? It's indexed just like with the array. The index positions, start at 0. The count is 5. It's 5 total items. 5 total items, and they're indexed 0 through 4. So we have 5 total items. 5 total items, right? And it's indexed 0 through 4. Note the square brackets, right? And each one of these items holds a string, right? Because I declared it as a string. And note too that this is a list. This is of list type, right? So of list type. It's list of strings. That's the type. It's a list of strings, right? So that's the type. And let's see. Okay, this add range. Okay, let's see what happens when we execute this code. We're going to add this array to our list. So let's see what happens. Go ahead and execute that code. And now let's look at store list. Now we have 10 items. Now the count is 10, right? So we just added these 5 items. We added this entire array to our list. So now we have 10 items in our list, right? So let's keep stepping. We're on this line. So let's go ahead and execute this line. This is the insert method. The insert method. And what this does, this is the index number. So we have our index 0 through 9 in this case. So this says I want to insert something at this index position, in this case 0. So I want to put something in this position, this index position, and this is what I want to put there, right? So we're passing this method 2 values, and note the comma, we're separating it with a comma. So the first value is the index number, right? The index number, and by the way, you can, as we said before, is type in the opening parentheses, and you can see it tells you what it's looking for. It wants the index, right? The index where you want to put it, and the item that you want to put in there. In this case, it's a string, right? And this gives you a definition of the parameter. Again, these are called parameters. This gives you the definition of the parameters. This gives you more information about it. So we need two values here. The index number, where do you want to put it? What spot, what slot on this list do you want to put this? And what do you want to put there, right? So this says put this string, Kool-Aid, in the 0th position, which is right here. So it should go here and knock Nutty Bars to the next position. So let's execute that, see what happens. And there we go. So now we got Kool-Aid in the 0th, right? The 0th index position, right? We have Kool-Aid there. And note that Nutty Bars went to index 1, right? So that's all the insert does. Okay, so this is just another example. This I'm basically doing the exact same thing here, but this time I'm putting it in the 5th index position, which would be right here where Pickle is now. So it's going to knock Pickle down and put this new item. But here I'm using a variable. Instead of putting in the literal string like we did here, here I'm assigning this string to a variable, and then I'm using the variable, right? Which is more common, really. So we're on this line, so let's go ahead and step over and see what happens. So it should put this, whatever's in this box, right, which in this case is string wraps, and it's going to put it in the 5th index position. So let's look at the store list again. 5th index position, and there it is, wraps, right? Okay, so let's look at the insert range. Here I'm just creating another array, right, of the square brackets. The string array, creating a string array. That's all. That's all that is my variable that holds the string array. The new keyword says create a new whatever this is. Create me a new one. Right. In this case, it's a string. We have to tell it how many items. We want 2, and I'm just going to use the collection initializer. Right. Just to condense the code. There's 2. We can only put 2 items, 2 elements into this string array. So I've got 2 elements, so I'm going to go ahead and populate it with the collection initializer, and let's go to the next line. And so this insert range, basically the same as insert, but here we're inserting a range of values, a collection, another collection. And just like the add range, very similar to the add range, but if you use the add range, it just tacks it on to the end, right? It just adds it to the end. It appends it, all right? It appends to the list. But what if you want the collection to go at a specific spot? So in this case, we want to add this array, which holds 2 items. We want to add that array to our list, right? But we want to put it at a specific spot. We want to put it here, right? So let's go ahead and execute this. And let's go back to our store list and index 2. And here we have soups and toothpaste. So we've indexed 2, right, in 2 and 3, and soups and toothpaste, right? Soups and toothpaste. So this is we've added this array, but we added it to a specific spot. So the add range will add an array, but it just appends to the list at the end of the list. Insert range adds to the list, but at a specific spot, right? At a specific spot. In this case, it's index 2, right? Index 2. So that's all that does. All right, so the remove method just removes something, right? Just takes it off the list. So in this case, it removed cookies, and you put in the actual value, whatever value you want to remove. In this case, we're working with strings. We've got a list of strings, right? So we put in the string that we want it to remove, and you can use a variable, and more often in this, you would use variables here. We're just using a literal string for this example. If you look at the list and the locals, you'll see that there are no more cookies, right? I'm on a diet, so I'm trying to cut out the cookies, trying to cut back. So I've eliminated the cookies. I've removed the cookies from the list. That's what this remove method does, right? It just removes something from the list, right? So with the remove method, we give it the actual value that we want it to remove. We could also use this remove at. Remove at says remove at this index position. In this case, it's 3. It's the 4th item. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 3rd index position. So it says remove at this index position. So this is going to remove toothpaste. I'm going to take toothpaste off the list. I may get a cavity because of this, but it's going to take toothpaste off the list, right? So we remove the 4th item, or the 3rd index position, but it's the 4th item. And that's again, that's a little confusing at first, but the more you play around with it, the more it'll make sense to you. More comfortable you'll be with it. So the 4th item, which is the 3rd index position. So this line has not executed yet. So let's go ahead and step over to execute that line, and look at the list again. And toothpaste is gone. There's no more toothpaste, so probably get a cavity. Okay, so that is a remove at, and you could also remove a range, right? So you remove a range, and this is the start, basically the start number. Where do you want to start removing? In this case, 0. We want it to start here, so if we remove starting at 0, the 2 is the count. This is the count. So we want to remove 2 items, right, starting at 0, starting at the 0 index position. So this should remove these 2 items, right, with 2 items starting at the 0th index position, starting at index 0. So let's execute that, and we can see that those first 2 items are now gone. So we remove those first 2 items. And these items moved up the list. So now soups is in the 0th, is the first item in the 0th index position, right? So we're going to let's go ahead and write those two to the console.writeLine. I want to introduce you to something called the output window. The output window, and it's right here, this tab here. If you don't see this, you can go to debug, debug windows, and select output here. So debug windows, and this is Visual Studio 2010, by the way. Might be a little different in 2015, but it's in there. So debug windows output, you just click on that. If you don't see it down here, but it may already be down here, you just click on the tab, that output tab. And this is kind of like that console. Remember the console apps? This is kind of like that, but it's called output, and this is a window where you can use the console.writeLine to write to this. And this is something I recommend. You can write values or tests, you can write test data or whatever to this output window. So I've used the console.writeLine just like we do with console apps, but this time instead of writing to a console, it's going to write to this output window. So here with the index numbers, and just like with arrays, you can use these square brackets to access the items in the list, right? So store list 0, let's go back to locals. Store list 0 index position is going to get soups, right? So let's go back to output. So this is going to write the whatever values in this index position, 0. It's going to write that to the screen, and here we go, soups, right? And same thing here, store list. This is going to get the index position 6, whatever's in there, 6. In this case, it's honey bun, and it writes that to the console, the output window. So let's look at this line, store list. Here's store list.count. Count is the property that gets, it's like length in array. In array we use length, all right? In a list we can use count, and it just counts the number of items. So let's go back to locals, and we can see the count in this case right now is 10, right? It's 10. So this is basically 10 minus 1, right? Let's go ahead and I'm going to stop this, and let's put a breaking point right there. Okay, let's get rid of this minus 1 and see what happens. So store list.count. Let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. Okay, I already had a breaking point set here, so I'm just going to press play. I've got a breaking point here. You can set multiple breaking points, by the way. See, I've got one set here. And if you scroll down, I've got another one, right? So it's stopped right here, so I'm going to press the continue button, and it's going to continue on to the next breaking point, right? So, okay, so this is 10. Store list.count 10, right? There's 10 in there. But think about this for a moment. There are 10 items. There are 10 items, but look at the index numbers. The index start at 0. So it's 0 through 9. So what's in the 10? This is trying to access the index number 10, the item that's in the index 10 position, and there's nothing. There is no index 10, right? So let's execute this and see what happens. And it's going to blow up. It blows up and tells us that we get this argument out of range exception. Argument out of range exception, because it's trying to access the item in the 10 index 10 position, and it's not there, right? There's nothing there. So it's throwing this exception. It's barking at us, right? It's blowing up. So let's stop this. So that's why I have the minus 1. So I want the total count minus 1. Whatever that, it doesn't, if there's 1,000 items in here, then the index numbers are going to go from 0 to 99. So this would give us 1,000. 1,000 minus 1 would give us the last. So this is going to give us the very last item. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, I've got this other breaking point, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to the next breaking point. So now let's run it. So now we can hover over the arithmetic operator, the minus sign, and we can see that's given us 9 now. So the count is 10 minus 1, so this gives us 9. So this gives us the 9th index position, right, which is going to give us that value, right, the chips in this case. So let's go ahead and execute that. And now we look at the output window, we should see chips, and there it is, right? So it just wrote that to the output screen. And let's go ahead and execute that line, and we can see just using this count property again, and it's given us the count 10. There's 10 items. All right, there are 10 items in the list, and it's just assigning this integer, and it's just assigning it to this variable, which has been declared as int, by the way. Okay, so let's look at this method reverse. What do you think the method reverse does? Yeah, exactly, it reverses the list, right? It just flips it around. And note the open and close parentheses. We're not passing a value to this. We're not passing a value to this method, but we still have to have these parentheses. Still got to have those parentheses, open and close parentheses. Anytime you're dealing with a method, right, you know the little purple box represents a method. And we'll type in REV. And this gives you some information. It reverses the order of the elements in the specified range, right? And it's a method, it's a purple box, so got to have the parentheses. And let's take a look at the list. Soups is the first element, chips is the last. Let's go ahead and execute. And it just reversed the list. Now chips is the first element, the 0th index position, and soups is the last. So it just flipped the list, right? It just reversed the elements in the list. Okay, so what if we want a subset of the collection? And we can use the get range method. This gets a subset of that collection, right? And 2 is our starting point. This is the start point, 2. So it's going to start here at shampoo, right? This index 2 position. It says start here. Start at index 2, right? That's what this does. Start at index 2. And we can look at, type in the parentheses. And the first parameter here is index. So it wants an index. Give the index number. And the next one is the count, right? It's the count. Right. And by the way, you can type in this comma and see now it has this bolded. The second parameter is now bolded, and it's giving you the definition of the second parameter, right? Which is count the number of elements in the range. So however many elements you want to get. So it's saying we want to start at index 2. And we want 6, give me 6 items. Starting at 2, give me 6, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So 3rd through 8, right? 3rd through 8 items. Starting at index 2 is the 3rd item, right? And again, this is a little confusing at first. Index 2 is the 3rd item. Index 7 is the 8th item. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute that. And now we have a list called subset, and it's here somewhere. Here it is, and it has 6 items, right? 6. One of 6 items, and shampoo, honey bun, right? So these are the 6 items. So we just got a subset of our list. Okay, so this last one just converts the list to an array. So if you ever need to convert that list to an array, this is how you can do it. You just call this toArray, and let's go ahead and run that. So we have store array 2, and here it is, store array 2. So we just now we have an array of that same list, right? So it just creates an array. So that's all that does. Okay, so that's it for this one. I know it was a long one. Kudos for hanging in there, and I'll